Hello again. Um, Welcome to my YouTube channel. My attempt, at least. Um, Tonight I felt drawn to have some relaxing background. I don't know whether this is an anchor or just music to me plays a very important role, and so I think it's only fair to use it to enhance my contemplative state, my meditations. Um, right. Now going back to the book, I've been called to. I felt called to present and to read to you, namely the 7-point mind training, written by Alan Wallace. I I plan for tonight to read a few paragraphs from the last point of the first step. So the last point of the first step, which is the fourth point of the first. Oh my God, is the last point of the first step. And the first step is the fundamentals of Dharma. And if I just mix them up, point and step, I apologize now, but anyway. So again, he talks about 7 points. So the first point is about the fundamentals of Dharma, and at this point it refers to 4 awarenesses, and we talked about I've read at least about the awareness of importance of life, the how valuable life is. The next awareness was awareness of death and impermanence, and the third one was referring to having awareness about karma and its consequences. And tonight, the fourth step, the fourth awareness, is about the unsatisfactory nature of the cycle of existence. And while reading this sub chapter to myself, I realized that it's a little bit denser than the previous chapter, so I think worth reading it to you. So here I go. This is remember, this is Alan Wallace talking about the nature of the cycle of existence. At some point you're gonna hear me saying something like I did this or I said that. I'm not talking about myself, it's Alan Wallace talking about something else that he did. Okay, so going back to this sub-chapter. The last of the 4 fundamental preliminaries emphasized in Geshe Rabten's commentary is the unsatisfactory nature of the cycle of existence. The term samsara, translated as cycle of existence, is often misunderstood by Westerners. Even people familiar with Buddhist teachings use the term casually to refer to their physical environment, be it the planet Earth or Los Angeles. This is missing the point. Samsara is not a geographic location, nor is it nature. Buddhas have lived Buddhas have lived on planet Earth, and yet they are utterly free of samsara. Samsara is a condition of life, but it is not life itself. Escaping from samsara does not mean being extinguished or annihilated, any more than it means leaving the city for a mountain retreat. So the invitation to leaving samsara shouldn't be taken so dramatically, like, oh, I'm losing something. The invitation of leaving samsara should be translated more into an invitation of exploring something else. And maybe that might sound more appealing to the people who love life. But the people who love life but are trapped in their own attachments. So they fear of novelty. They have some fear of novelty, and they feel reassurance in the things and security in things they already know. The cycle of existence, is a way of being. Specifically, it is the condition of being propelled from the experience of one lifetime to another by the force of our mental afflictions and the actions they have tainted. To me, this is an interesting story. Like, I take it as a metaphor, but also I like to think of it as being something real in a sense. So if I do the right thing now, how do I know what's the right thing? It's difficult, and that's why I would like to develop my contemplative skills to answer this kind of questions. How do I know what's the right thing to do or to think? It says here, samsara is a condition of being propelled from the experience of one lifetime to another by the force of our mental afflictions and the actions they have tainted. Is this in a moral way? There are experiments, I don't know how significant they are, but there are experiments where the experimenter asked the participant to choose a picture, and I don't think I can tell you the entire story. It's a longer history behind this experiment. I don't think I have the right words and the full explanation of the experiment. But what they observed is that the participant had the task to choose one card between pairs of cards. There was a computer who, before the person chosen which card he preferred between those two, the computer randomly allocated a subliminal another subliminal picture to randomly selected one of those two cards. Okay, so now the pictures that were allocated were either erotic, neutral, or pictures that would elicit fear. Okay, three types of subliminal cards. Now, apparently, even if the person picked between the two cards the one that they preferred, apparently the computer allocated most of the times the erotic card to the card that the participants actually chosen after the computer randomly allocated the three from the three subliminal cards to one of the two cards from which the participant had to choose from. If it makes sense. So the participant had two cards in front of him or her, and the computer before, no, actually let's do this. Computer had three subliminal cards. Why subliminal? This is how they call it. This is how they call them. One picture is erotic, one neutral, one elicits fear. Now, we put this aside. The participant had two cards from which to choose. The participant, okay, now, the computer allocates one card from those three subliminal cards to one of these two cards that the participant can see. Now the participant chooses one of the cards. When the analysis is done, apparently most of the times, statistically significant apparently, the participant chooses the card that the computer beforehand already allocated an erotic subliminal card to that card that the participant chose. What they mean by that, this is an experiment to prove that not only the past influences the present, but the future influences the present as well. Because apparently people do tend to choose erotic over fear. Erotic cards over fear, cards that depicts something that would elicit fear. And now the future is the moment when the person chooses the card, and the past is the moment when the computer randomly allocated one of those three subliminal cards to the card that the participant chose. Okay? A very, very long explanation, because my English is not my first language and is not well mastered by me. Anyway, I tried to explain this only because they mentioned being propelled from one lifetime to another, and I was thinking if what I did in a past life would influence what I do in this lifetime, but also what I will be doing in the future influences my choices in this lifetime. How the future would influence the past, not the present, but my past. I love this complication because makes more relative the bad and the good, and takes a lot of power from the morals. And I think when we work with our psyche, with our emotions, we have to stay away from, we have to, not to detach ourselves, but I think I need to be, this relationship with morals and ethics should be reframed. I need a different work frame, if that makes sense. I'm just rambling. I don't know what I'm talking about, but I think I had a few good ideas that I wanted to share, or at least some ideas that make sense for me. I'm gonna carry on, and I promise I won't stop again like this. The cycle of existence is a way of being. Specifically, it is the condition of being propelled from the experience of one lifetime to another by the force of our mental afflictions and the actions they have tainted. This condition of existence and the dissatisfactions it produces is the subject of meditation. Why meditate on suffering? It's not much fun. There are so many more enjoyable subjects in the wonderful menu of Tibetan meditation practices, let alone in other traditions. Loving kindness, soothing breath awareness, tantric sadhanas, dream yoga. For that matter, we could go to a good movie or out for a pizza. With all of this competition, why meditate on suffering? So we do this to escape from suffering. We're not actually suffering, but we go there mentally, maybe emotionally as well. I think we work on ourselves when we go into these simulations. We work on what we actually think, how we react to a dangerous situation, a situation where suffering is implied. We don't meditate only on suffering, but we meditate on everything relating to suffering, which means what triggers suffering and what could pull us out from suffering, and what is suffering. Because suffering, what made me suffer yesterday, today might be something that I don't really find that dangerous or threatening, or maybe I just gained some kind of resilience to that, or maybe familiarity, or I realized, oh my god, I was afraid of my shadow. It's something that is natural. Or I was afraid of success, whatever that might be. What I want to say, I might discover that I was afraid of something that was actually really good and very beneficial to me. There is something unsatisfying about the way we live, and this need not continue. Otherwise, the Buddha would never have troubled us by pointing out the unsatisfying nature of life. Even as a successful life, a delightful family situation, a good job, a sunny day, why is there an element of dissatisfaction and anxiety in all human relations, lying so often just beneath the surface, even in times of pleasure? Something is the fault is outside. The fault is not outside us, in the environment. Samsara is not out there, but rather in the way that we experience our environment. I think at some point in my life I was most of my life I considered me the problem, and I considered that the solution lies inside, looking inside of myself. But lately I discovered that environment is important, but nevertheless, there is a very subjective component to those situations where you say, "Oh, the environment is no, it's toxic. Is not the best environment." Actually, that's one of my best opportunities to practice that side of myself, that side of my psyche, of my soul, that is not well developed in that situation. So I have no actual way of rebalancing myself, finding my center in that kind of situation. The 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 environment is toxic, but also it's a good opportunity for me to detoxify it. And that detoxification, I think, is what meditation is about. What meditation on suffering is about. To target it precisely, samsara is in the quality of our minds. Our minds are not functioning in accord with reality, and therein lies the problem. The Lamrim teachings on the stages of the path elaborate on various types of suffering. It is important to spend some time on this, whether we are old hands at Buddha Dharma or have recently encountered it. The New Age movement has emphasized the power of affirmative thinking, focusing on the positive aspects of our lives, of our life. Sorry, focusing on the positive aspects of our lives can reinforce or help to realize them. This could imply that meditation on suffering increases the experience of suffering. If we practice incorrectly, this can be quite true. I have met very sincere Buddhists, usually Western Buddhists, who walk about in a cloud of pessimistic gloom and doom that they have created in their meditations. Their enjoyment of something as simple as ice cream is soured by the notion that everything is suffering. This response to life is a distortion of the practice. On the other hand, people who have spent a great deal of time in Lamrim meditations on suffering and its sources tend to be cheerful, serene, and contented as a result. I once translated, so he refers to himself, to Alan. I once translated for a Tibetan Lama who spoke to a large group about the different types of suffering that we experience. When it was time for questions, a member of the audience asked, "Lama, you have been speaking at such length about all these forms of suffering, and the fact that all of our experience is permeated by dissatisfaction. Yet, while teaching this, both you and your interpreter seemed so happy. How can you talk so cheerfully about suffering?" The Lama paused and then responded with a big smile. "There is such a thing as untainted joy." By this he meant joy untainted by the mental afflictions of attachment, anger, or confusion. Why meditate on suffering? So that we can escape it and discover gradually through our own experience the contentment that arises from a wholesome and balanced heart and mind. What can prod us to cultivate this quality of awareness from day to day, from moment to moment? There's a question. Yeah. A vivid awareness that investing our lives in the acquisition of pleasant external stimuli results only in dissatisfaction. I will emphasize the word only. Okay. I'm still tempted to say maybe. What would it take to be really happy? Do we think of a change in our environment, relationships, acquisitions, or health? Or do we answer instead, if my heart and mind were more loving, if I were free of resentment, more forgiving, more fluid in my responses to life, endowed with greater wisdom and mental stability? Meditation on suffering holds enormous practical value and is a necessary foundation for making full use of the 7 point mind training. Many Buddhist teachers have emphasized the need for deep insight into the nature of suffering in order to develop true compassion and loving kindness towards other living beings. Otherwise, compassion arises only when we see someone in obvious pain. When we see the bland, expressionless faces of people walking down the street, we may feel nothing much at all and think, so what? They are living their lives and I'm living mine. But if we look deeper, with vivid awareness into the actual nature of our existence, the source of happiness and suffering, the role of karma, the fact of impermanence of death, and the precious value of a fully endowed human life, oops, then a much deeper sense of compassion for other beings can arise and endure. Only this compassion can form the basis of bodhicitta, the spirit of awakening. I've spent 26 minutes on reading and commenting on this book. I apologize for my diversions, but yeah, I hope you can forgive me. Why I thought this subchapter was quite important, because all my life I felt that death and suffering are really important to meditate on. Not only because I came to this realization, I came to this abstract realization mentally, but also I came with a load of fear of death from my mother, fear of the trauma of being abandoned, because my mom lost her mother when my mom was quite young. Plus, there was a lot of young people dying in my mom's family, people who were lost to war when they went to war. They never came back. Yeah, so I do think that there is an unsatisfactory aspect to everything we experience when we experience from a shallow perspective. And what is shallow perspective? How do I measure the depth of my appreciation? I tend to think in terms of integration, wholeness, from a very religious perspective. Like, I need to reconnect with something, and I like to think in opposites and in paradoxical complement couples. I like to think that when I'm being challenged, if I see an angry person, then I try. If I see an angry person, if that person's state triggers something that is intense inside of myself, that is similar to what they feel, I would like to focus and see what's missing there. What do I need to put? How can I sort that situation out for myself? If I can talk or interact with that person, how can I? Sorry, it's night here. It's quite late. Sorry for yawning. How could I how would I help? How could I support? How could I contain that anger of the other person, the sadness, even the inner schisma, the inner like like a like a person who breaks down into tears, who feels that everything is lost. How can I actually present myself and create something that could have the meaning of a solution to the other person? Thanks for listening to this point, up to this point. I know I go on many directions, and sometimes I might not be that focused, but again, this has to do with not being able to express myself properly in English. I'm gonna invite you now to meditate with me for 10 minutes. Again, my phone is away from me, so I will rely on my instincts, and in 10 minutes I will meditate for 10 minutes now. So join me if you feel. If not, feel free to do something else. Okay. was battling the not to fall asleep, but also it was it was a different kind of depth this time. I felt tingling and vibrations, very intense. The level of my neck, spine, head. It's always intense. It's always intense, and it's always not only like a reboot, but like an optimization. It's amazing meditating, and I tend to combine meditation with prayer as well, and some other practices that I've picked up during my psychological practice. Yeah, for me meditation is amazing, and I hope for you is the same. I wish you will be able to meditate on suffering, and from this to harness that pure joy, which is specific to the Buddhist tradition. The paradox of two things that can't be together, they do exist in the Tibetan tradition. Sadness and joy can be accessed one after the other without being bipolar or schizophrenic. It's very interesting and very powerful. Thank you for being with me for this time. I think it's nice to think that there is someone who watches what I post. Bless you, and I wish you again joy.